Welcome to tonight's Tanya class. We are studying the second section of Tanya. The first one was Likutei Amarim. The second one is called Shar, HaYichud, Veemunah. And we are studying tonight the third chapter in Shar, HaYichud, Veemunah. Since there's some new people here, so first of all, welcome. Every chapter in Tanya, whether it's the first section, the second, and later on the sections of Tanya, every section, every chapter is a foundation in mysticism. This is called the Bible of mysticism. So every single one is revolutionary, every single one is a foundation, every single one is very, very important. This chapter in Tanya, chapter 3, in the second section of Shar, HaYichud, Veemunah, is a very, very important section, and that is an important chapter, and that is as follows. Shar, HaYichud, Veemunah, this section of Tanya, the second section, which actually the Alter Rebbe had a thought to make it the first. And on some certain level, if you see the way the Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya, even after he put it the second, there's still room to say that it possibly should have gone be the first. And the reason is because this is the foundation to everything. What does that mean? Shar HaYichud means the gate to the oneness. Oneness means, again, like we always say, not 1 versus 2 and 3. Oneness in the true sense of the word, that the only one existence that exists is what? Is God. Tables, chairs, buildings, people, places, things. It's all part of the oneness of God. Ultimately, it's all one. And as the Alter Rebbe explained in the first two chapters, both scripturally and logically, that when God created and maintains the world, so the word and the words that God used to create are constantly and consistently active in the world, because if not, if God stopped creating, it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be. So the Alter built us up a big pyramid the last 2 weeks, the last two chapters, that if God would not right now at this moment say Yehi Ur, Yehi Rakia, the 10 utterances, and all the other derivatives of it, if he stopped saying it, we would not be. We, him, her, nothing would be. Nothing would be. So now it's like the Alter brought us up to a cliff, and this week we're going to almost like look over the cliff and maybe even fall. Maybe. We'll see. So this chapter, again, chapter 3, we're on the cliff. And because we're on the cliff, the Alter is going to start off with something real, true, revolutionary, not to scare anybody, but factual reality. And the real question is, based on what we studied the last 2 weeks, a simple question: do we really exist? It's not a philosophical question, and it's not a theoretical question, and it's not a mind game question. This is a very real question. Do we really exist? In other words, the Alter Rebbe is not just throwing out a question. He's asking a question based on a foundation, that we studied the last 2 weeks, that what? That God created us, but something from nothing, and the rule is when you create something from nothing, you have to constantly recreate every moment. In other words here, let me give you a simple example. Take, for example, this table. You see this table? Okay, it's a big piece of wood. Whether it's made of a bunch of pieces, it's irrelevant. We see one piece of wood. We see one piece of wood. Okay. Now, this table is, I would say, what? How many feet off the ground? 3. 3 feet off the ground? Okay. 3 feet off the ground. If you give a look underneath the table, between the table and the ground, is there anything holding up the table?
Yes.
There is.
The legs.
Legs, right? Okay, so 1 second, hold that a moment. So you have this big plank of wood in the middle of this beautiful room, sitting 3 feet above the ground, and there's legs, posts, holding up the table. Right? Look, and it's correct. What would be, now no one do this, please, but let's imagine, right? We don't need any excitement here. What would be if someone magically walks over and pulls out the posts, the legs from underneath the table? What happens to the table?
Falls.
What happens to the table?
Falls.
It falls. It goes to the ground. So in other words, this table that's sitting here mid-ear, is it sitting mid-ear? Is it sitting? No, it's not sitting mid-ear. It's sitting on legs that the legs are touching the ground. In other words, if I took out the legs, table goes back to the ground. Now, what would be if I took out the legs and I pushed energy, whether you can see the energy, and I pushed energy to hold the table up, whether you want to call it hydraulic ear or any other type of pressure, right? You have this ear pressure, and it's holding up the table. And in other words, so if I tell you, look underneath the table, and it's being pushed up by ear, strong ear from a what those ear pressure machines, and it's pushing up the ear, and the pressure can do it, and it's holding up the table. And I tell you, oh my gosh, look at the table. Is it mid-ear? It is. Do you see anything holding it up?
No.
No, because you don't see. You see right through the ear. Now, am I a magician? No, I'm not a magician. Before there was wood holding up the table, and now instead of wood holding up the table, what do you have holding up the table?
Law of nature.
You have ear. Through a mechanic of heavy pressure that's blowing heavy ear into the table. It's holding up in the air. Now, before I saw legs, so I saw it was holding up. Now I don't see anything. So it looks like in the Hebrew it's called achizas einayim, which is magic, which basically is a play on the eye. It looks like it's standing mid-ear. And I said, wow, it's standing mid-ear. You go, yeah, Rabbi, it's standing mid-ear, magic. And then all of a sudden I lower the pressure from the ear. What happens to the table? It starts going. Well, I didn't close the pressure. I said I lower the pressure. All of a sudden, it starts going down a little bit. And the more I take away the pressure, guess what happens? It will land up on the floor. I bring back up the pressure. It goes back up. So in other words, the only reason why the table is up 3 feet high, it's one of two reasons. Either there's a foot. Or a wood or metal, some kind of a frame that's holding it up, or there's pressure which doesn't look like we see it, but the reality is it's propping it up. But in either case, without something supporting it, it would go back to the ground. In other words, so when you create because a table really naturally belongs on the floor. I mean, a piece of wood belongs in the floor. The reason why it's up in the air is because something's supporting it. Stop supporting it, it goes back in the ground. So the natural place for this plank of wood, or it could be glass or any type of material, is on the ground. You prop it up either with something that you see, or you prop it up with pressure, but in either case, the minute you stop propping, it goes right back down. So, back to the point. When you see the table in the ear, is the table really in the ear? Is the table in the ear? Is the piece of wood in the ear?
Yeah.
It looks like it's in the ear, but it's only in the ear because someone's supporting it. So if I ask you, does these planks of wood sit in mid-ear? And the answer is absolutely not. They don't sit mid-ear. Something is holding it up. Let's bring back to our case. Each and every one of us, and not only people, but things that exist in this world, are we here right now? We are here just like the tables in mid-ear. The reason why we are here, because God is saying, keep this guy alive. Create this guy. Maintain this person. The minute God, for a second, not even a second, a split second, stops saying that, that would be just like someone pulling the plug in the pressure tank and the table falls. And we would disappear. Simple? Are you guys still standing straight?
Still here.
Why are you here?
Because God
Oh, very good. He got it. No, he got
is
it.
holding us up.
In 2 words, thank God.
Thank God.
Right? Or in Hebrew, Baruch Hashem. The Baal Shem Tov was very strong. And Baruch Hashem, bless God, because if not for God, I would not be here the second. So, matter of fact, we say I'll call Nashima for every breath that you take. You have to tahawukal, you have to thank God. Because if at this second God would not create you, maintain you, you would not be. So every moment that you're here, you have to thank God. I'm here. Yeah, God, thank you. I'm here. I'm breathing. I'm alive. You got it? Okay. So back to the point.
For every breath.
Do we exist? In the true sense of the word. Do we exist?
Yes.
Really?
Only in
For the
God's
grace
mind.
of God.
Only in the mind of God.
Okay. Do we exist or don't we exist?
It's a concept.
Let's get real. Is the table exist mid-air? It looks like, no, it doesn't. There's something pushing it up. So in other words, like this, let's get to the truth of it. Do we really exist?
No.
No. What really exists?
God.
God is the only real existence. We don't exist.
Well, they say that when Columbus's ships came to America and the Indians that were on shore, when they looked out into the ocean, they didn't see anything. They
Okay.
had no concept
Okay.
of what a ship is. So they didn't know. They
That's
just
right.
looked out in the ocean and they
Right.
didn't see anything.
Okay.
So to them, since they had no name,
I got it.
They had no concept of it.
I got it. Again, we're talking deeper. We're talking true existence. Do we really exist? The answer is we do not exist. The only real existence is God. In other words, here, so the reality is we do not exist.
100%.
Okay. The only thing that exists is God. So now comes the question, we just established the fact that the truth is we do not exist. The only thing that exists is God. So how come I walk around saying, hey, my name is Rabbi Minkowicz, and you say your name is Rabbi John and Warren, and we're sitting on a table, and by the table on a chair, and we have a book.
Listening to Tanya about God.
And we're talking. Hello, if you're saying that we really don't exist, so why are you saying I or you, or what are we doing here, right? In other words, fine, we established the fact we don't exist. The only real existence is God. So now, are we meshuggah? You know what meshuggah means? Are we crazy? So then why are we saying I, you, and we have plans where we're going in 5 minutes, and we can tell you where we were yesterday, and we're going to eat dinner, and tomorrow we're going to go pray, and hello, do we exist or we don't exist? So we don't exist. So then why do we have names, and why do we have titles, and why do we have hats and jackets, right?
Why am I in debt?
And okay, there you go.
I don't exist. What are you talking about? I don't know you anybody.
That's a conventional truth. That we have names.
In the mind of God we exist.
Right? Okay. So the Alter Rebbe says he's going to give us an analogy. Because what happens when you deal with something deep, it's hard to deal with it head on. You need an analogy. The analogy the Alter Rebbe says is as follows. To try to comprehend this concept. On one hand, we really don't exist. The only thing that really exists is God. On the other hand, there seems to be, right? And we're saying seems to be, a certain existence that we do have.
Yeah.
Which one's correct? Shar says he'll give us an analogy. And it's a very practical analogy. And he says like this. Take, for example, you go outside, Berkshire, we live in Florida, right? So we have, like, the sun is shining always in Florida. I don't know other parts of the world, but I know in Florida the sun is shining. So when we talk about the sun shining, we can go outside actually and see it. I think certain parts of the world doesn't shine. Right, Alaska, certain times of the year, right? Okay, okay. But in Florida, thank God, we have the sun shining. Now, you go outside, and actually, thank God, even like these long days, the sun is still shining nicely. And you give a look in the sun. And then you give a look in the world. In the world, there's something which is called, that the sun produces, something which is called light. What does light mean? Light means it's light. You have the ability to see. And we created this term light. and I say to you, point to me at the light.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere, but really, where's the light? What is the light? Can you touch it? Can you feel it?
No.
Okay, let's trace it where it's coming from. Where's the light coming from?
Sun.
So so it's coming from the sun. Now, if we were able to take a journey now, get into our private helicopter, right? Jet plane, and we take a journey up into the sun. And I say to you, come, let's go to the sun. And we come to the sun, I say, okay, you said the light that's in the world, in this physical world, is coming from the sun. Can you please show me the light in the sun? Do you think you can show me the light into the sun? No. Because in the sun, light does not exist. In the sun, you have the sun. In the sun, you have the sun, you have no light.
It's
Wow.
emanating, it's not.
One second, but let's take one thing at a time. We take a journey into the sun. I say, show me the light. Hello, you have the sun. You don't have the light. Okay, so when I take you a journey to the place where the light's coming from, you tell me there's no light here. There's only sun. Okay, goodbye. Going back to Earth. Take a jet, come back to Earth. Do we see the sun here? No, the sun's up there. We left sun land. Right? Even though it's called Sunland, right? We fly down back to Earth, and all of a sudden we have light. So the question is, Alter Rebbe asks a very simple question. In the source where the light comes from, there is no light. It's called sun, and it is sun. Once the light leaves the sun and comes down to Earth, there is no sun and you have light. Whoa, what is that all about? But the Alter Rebbe explains, very simple, and it's correct. In the source, you have sun. When you have sun, who cares about light? Who needs light? Who wants light? Light doesn't exist because you have the sun. Once you go away from the sun, so you don't have the sun. The sun is up in heaven, close to heaven. You come down to Earth. The sun is not here. You look outside from here. You see. You don't. Let's say you look out from the window. You don't see the sun, but you see light, which the light is coming from the sun. Fascinating idea, Alter Rebbe says. In the source, you have sun, no light. Down here, there's no sun, but you have light. In other words, what the Alter Rebbe is explaining is as follows. In the source, the only thing that exists is the source. The only thing that exists is the sun. Once the source is gone, or hidden, or concealed, then you have the possibility to create something which is called light, which actually comes from the sun, but has its own identity. In other words, why do we call the light outside sun? Because it's not the sun. It's not the sun, it's light. It created an identity because it went away from its source.
Rays from the sun.
But in the source it's nothing, and out of the source, down here, there's a new concept, light. It has a source. In the source, it's nothing. So the Alter Rebbe uses this analogy to explain to us our original question. What's the question? Do we exist? And the answer is no. The only real existence that exists is what? Is God. So if God is the only real existence, so why don't we say, hey, God, 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 right? I mean, and that's the truth. But the Alter Rebbe says very simple. Just like in the source, it's the sun, but the source gets hidden, so you have all of a sudden this thing called light. The same thing also, the truth is, the only real existence is God. There's no me, there's no you, there's no him, there's no her, there's no tables, there's chairs, there's nothing, there's no cars, there's nothing, there's just God. But because God's concealed, so all of a sudden, you have all these like pop-ups. Me, him, her, you, table, chair, building, glass, house, car, boats, planes, whatever. Right? And the books keep on going on. So in other words, like this. What the Alter was saying, like, the rule is a simple rule. When the source is revealed, the only real existence is what?
The source.
The source. Just like in the sun, the only real existence is the sun. The only real existence is God. But what happens when the source is hidden? All of a sudden, we got something called light. It created its own identity. The same thing also, God's hidden. All of a sudden we have tables, we have chairs, we have this one, that one, he said, she said, and I'm right, and you're wrong, and he's right, and she, right? Why is that? because the source is hidden. In other words, practically speaking, when God is concealed, all of a sudden you have all these, like, let's use simple English, all these arrogant things that start growing up. In other words, if God was really revealed, would a chair stand up and say, I'm a chair? Would a table say, I'm a table? Would I stand up and say, hey, I'm giving the class tonight? No.
It would be God.
It would be God. Because God is concealed, all of a sudden there's me and there's him and there's a book and etc. So in other words, the only reason why we say or think or feel that we exist is because God's concealed.
Basically, because God's concealed, there is us.
Yes.
Yes.
That's it.
Not really us. A theory, a feeling.
That's my book. You write your own book.
I got it. Okay. Okay. But the Alter Rebbe says, he brought a beautiful analogy. He brought it. The Alter Rebbe brought the analogy. He says, but there's one issue with the analogy that you can't compare the two. He says, very simple. When you have the sun and you have the world where the sun, so to speak, sun is sitting in heaven, you're higher up, and the world where the sun is not revealed, you have the light. So the reality is, where's the sun? Where's the source of the sun? All the way up there. Down here is the sun. Is the sun here? No.
No, just the light.
You have the light from the sun. So there it makes sense that you can have a creation or something that we call light. But the Alter Rebbe asks the question, hold on, where is God? Only in heaven? No. God is everywhere. If God would not be, would this table be? God is where the table is. God is where the chair is. God is where I am, you are. God is everything and everywhere. So could you compare the analogy of the sun with the light with us and God? No. Because God is everywhere and God is everything. So in other words, this analogy I gave you is a good analogy. It's cute. And there is some you can understand a certain concept when something's concealed. All of a sudden we pop up. But the Alter Rebbe says, 1 second, that would be true if God was really concealed. But is God really concealed? Could you say God is concealed? No. Because if you said God's concealed, you wouldn't be, we wouldn't be. So is God here or not here? So God is here. So we're back to square one.
Rabbi, so is God within the emptiness of the table and in the chair?
In everything.
So he's the emptiness of it.
Not everything. Why emptiness? The emptiness, the fullness, everything is God. Everything is God.
It just even, interestingly, the way I'm understanding is even the concept of emptiness is God.
Yes, exactly. You got it. It's like the magic answer in this class.
Don't the clouds conceal the sun sometimes?
Fine, but that's about the sun. We're talking now back to the point of God. So God is everything. So based on that, the Alter Rebbe comes back to the question he asked in the beginning of the chapter, or the statement that he brought in the beginning of the chapter. If that's the case, that God is really everything and God is really everywhere. So if that's the case, and you ready for the question? How can we exist?
Really?
We don't.
We don't really exist.
You're already giving an answer. Before we get to an answer, here's the question. If that's the case, how can we really exist?
We can't.
So why are we saying I, me, him, her, and why are we going to places and doing it if we don't really exist?
Because God allows us to, in His mind, and He allows us to breathe and to exist.
But God is allowing us. You're jumping for an answer. Let's first get the question straight.
Oh.
The question is, how can we exist if God's
I
here?
think it's because we live in a dualistic world.
Again, let's first get the question. The rule is, if you really want to have an answer, you first need to get the question. Let's first get the question. The question has to bother you. See, if you have an answer, it means the question's not really bothering you. The question has to bother you. So, in other words, the purpose of chapter 3 is that this question should be ingrained in you, and this question should bother you. Let's not jump for answers yet. Because guess what? Guess what? Can I tell you something? A secret? That's the next part I was going to say. The Alter Rebbe finishes off this chapter, chapter 3, which is revolutionary.
This asks a lot of, it creates questions.
Right. So the Alter Rebbe finishes off chapter 3, which is very revolutionary and unique and one of a kind, where he finishes off the chapter with this question. And the question is, he started with the question, he ends with the question, and he's still remaining strong. If that is the case, that God is everything, God is everywhere, and it's not like the sun, how can we exist? That's the question Alter Rebbe asks.
How?
You know what
Before
makes me
What's
two
up?
weeks,
What's up?
now it's now.
Let me finish the point.
One thing, Rabbi.
Let me.
It makes me feel a little insecure.
One second. We're going to get to that in a second. Hold on. So now the question is, and like you said, it makes you feel insecure. Why we have a rule that we never finish off a chapter with a question? Why? What's the problem with the question? Because if you leave off a chapter with a question, people can start thinking, and when people start thinking, we know the mind is limited, and the mind is subjective, and you can come up with crazy ideas and crazy thoughts. Like you said, you can become insecure and you can feel inferior, so on and so forth. So the question is, and this is a big question everyone asks, how come the Alter Rebbe finished off this chapter with a question? How come he finished off with a question? The answer they give is very simple. Because normally, you're right, we don't leave questions. But let's analyze this question Alter Rebbe is leaving us. Let's get to the depth of the question. And you'll see why the question is really important. What is the question Alter Rebbe is asking us?
How?
The question is, since everything is God, and the only reason why we're here is because of God, and the only true existence is God, so then the reality is we don't exist, or how could we exist? So what they explain is the reason why the Alter Rebbe is leaving off of this question is because when a person thinks about this question, where is this question going to take you? When you start thinking about the fact that the truth is everything is God, everything comes from God. Now again, we don't have the answer yet, but the Alter Rebbe wants us to think about the question, not an answer. He wants us to go into the question deeper and deeper. Because once you start answering, you veered away from what the message is. The message of this chapter is that we should have the question. One second, don't answer, and we should continue to question. And the question is going to lead you to great places. Why? Because what's the question? The question is saying the truth is that everything is God. So if you ask that question over and over again, since everything is God, then really I don't exist. So really, if I don't exist, what's the real existence? God. And since the real existence of God, so who's the one ultimately that created the world? God. Who maintains the world? God. Everything is God. So the truth is, I don't really exist, right?
From the mind.
Well, you're jumping with answers. I don't want to hear answers. I want to hear the question. Again, the point of this chapter is to teach us to ask the question, and this is the only question that you're allowed to ask forever. You start giving answers, you're missing. You're already veering off from the message of chapter 3. Chapter 3 is not about looking for answers. Chapter 3 is about looking for the question, keeping on making the question stronger. So the truth is, again, thinking about it, as you're walking in the street, the only thing that really exists is God. Everything that happens in the world is from God. Now, what are you going to end up with? If you're going to end up with one thing, you're going to end up with, I'm giving you my opinion, but you can share your own. You're going to only end up in a good place. Why? Because you're going to end up with true trust in God, since He created and maintains the world. And once you have true trust in God, and you have because you have true faith that everything is from God and everything is God, how are you going to feel?
Wonderful.
You got it. You got it. You're going to feel wonderful. You're going to feel great. You know why? Because whose world is this?
God.
God's world. And we know God is good. And God wants the best for us. And God wants us to be safe. So if somebody opens up their mouth or says something inappropriate, not nice, or etc., how do you feel? You feel safe because I'm in God's world. Someone opened their mouth. Maybe it was God opening His mouth. Maybe He wanted to tell me a message. I don't know. Let me hear what God wants. In other words, if it takes away fear from you, it takes away literally any fear, any worry,
Any insecurity.
any insecurity, any concern. That's on the negative, it takes it away. On the positive, what does it bring out?
Feel loved.
Loved, happiness,
Compassion.
joy, compassion. But again, this is a very deep place to get to, and a great place to get. But you're going to get there by asking question of chapter 3, and this is the only chapter of the whole Tanya in general, any of mysticism, that they leave you with a question, because this is the only question that will lead you to great places. Again, what's the question? Not the question is, who is God and why believe in God? No, the question on the contrary, God is everything. God created everything. God maintains everything. And if that's the case, we don't exist. And if we don't exist, and how could we exist? And God is the one that created everything, and He maintains everything. So guess what? Who runs the world? God's world. We're guests. We're like on a free cruise with God around the world.
It's like a timeshare.
It's better than a timeshare.
Well, I say
It's like a fine. I got it.
discount. You just have to go on a couple of lectures. Yeah.
I got it. Okay. So in other words, recap. This chapter, chapter 3, Shar Veemunah, is one of the most strongest foundations of mysticism. And once you get this, and get it deeply, and you realize that the only real existence that exists in this world is God, and we really don't exist, not even compared to the sun with the light. The only real existence is God, and like the question is not a question with an answer. How could we exist? And the answer is we really don't exist. The only existence is God. That will lead you to real faith in God, real trust in God, which will lead you to an amazing, beautiful life that everything is wonderful, loving, and good.